I never thought my biggest nightmare would show up on my doorstep wearing sweatpants and a smug grin. My name's Trevor. I'm 32 years old, and I spent the last decade clawing my way out of a childhood that never really felt like mine. While most kids were out playing baseball or begging their parents for ice cream money, I was scrubbing floors, clipping grocery coupons, and pretending I wasn't bothered that my younger brother, Ryan, never lifted a finger. He always got the new toys, the praise, the extra slice of cake, while I got the lectures and the guilt trips. And now, after years of saving, hustling, working 2 jobs while going to night school, I finally had something of my own, my dream apartment. Quiet neighborhood, big windows, a balcony that overlooked the city skyline. It wasn't huge, but it was mine. Every inch of it was bought with sacrifice. I'd moved in just 3 weeks before it happened. I still remember the smell of fresh paint mixed with coffee the first morning I woke up there. I didn't even have a bed frame yet, just a mattress on the floor and boxes I hadn't unpacked, but it felt like peace. For the first time in my life, no one was yelling through the walls or asking me for money. I could breathe. I could be still. I could finally build a life on my own terms. And then came the knock. It was around 7:30 a.m. on a Saturday. I remember because I'd planned to sleep in for the first time in months. No alarms, no emails, no work. Just me, a blanket, and maybe some pancakes if I felt motivated. The knock started as a tap, but it quickly turned aggressive, like someone was trying to pound their way through the door. I groaned, rolled out of bed, and dragged myself to the peephole, expecting maybe a neighbor in distress or a package delivery gone wrong. But when I looked through, my stomach dropped. It was my dad, and standing behind him, arms crossed, and wearing that familiar smug look, was Ryan. I hesitated for a second. Something felt off. I hadn't spoken to my dad in weeks, and the last time we talked, it ended with him accusing me of forgetting where I came from. I almost didn't open the door, but a part of me, the trained part, the don't be rude part, gave in. I cracked it open, blinking away the sleep from my eyes. "Morning," I said, voice hoarse. "Everything okay?" Dad didn't waste a second. He shoved the door open fully and walked right in like he owned the place. Ryan followed, trailing a duffel bag that looked like it hadn't been zipped properly in years. I just stood there, stunned, as the two of them walked into my living room, looked around, and made themselves comfortable. Dad sat on the arm of the couch, while Ryan dropped his bag with a thud and flopped down onto the cushion like he was auditioning for a beer commercial. "We need to talk," Dad said. I didn't move. "About what?" He nodded toward Ryan. "He's going to stay here for a while." I blinked. "What?" "He needs a place to get back on his feet," he continued, as if this were some pre-planned intervention and I was just the final step in their master plan. "You've got space. It makes sense." Ryan didn't say a word. He just stared at me, chewing gum and bouncing his knee like he was bored out of his mind. I could already feel my blood pressure rising. My apartment was 1 bedroom. I didn't have a couch that turned into a bed. I didn't even have enough towels for 2 people yet. And now they were just assuming? I shook my head. "No, I'm sorry, but that's not going to happen." Dad raised his eyebrows like I'd just spoken in another language. "Trevor, don't be selfish." "Selfish?" I repeated, louder than I meant to. "I just moved in. I've worked for 10 years to get here. I finally have something that's mine, and you want me to. What? Give it up so Ryan can what? Crash on my couch indefinitely. He's your brother," Dad said, like that explained everything. "He's family." I looked at Ryan. He still hadn't spoken. No apology. No explanation. Just that smug, entitled smirk that I'd grown up with. That smirk that always said, "I'll get what I want eventually." I took a deep breath. "And what exactly happened to your apartment?" I asked him directly. Ryan shrugged. "Didn't pay rent." That was it. No shame, no excuse, just pure indifference. Like the consequences didn't matter because someone would always catch him when he fell. Dad stood up, walking toward me like he was delivering some righteous speech. "He's had a rough time. You wouldn't understand because everything's been handed to you lately." I actually laughed. "Handed to me?" I worked 2 jobs and went to school for 6 years straight. I slept in my car for 3 months in 2017 because you refused to co-sign for a lease. Don't talk to me about being handed anything. Dad's face hardened, like he was remembering something inconvenient. But he didn't back down. "This is temporary. A few weeks, that's all. Just until he finds work." I was about to speak when Ryan finally piped up. "Chill, man. It's not a big deal. I'll stay out of your way. That's when I knew they'd already made the decision for me. This wasn't a request. It was a demand, dressed up as a family favor. I crossed my arms. No, he's not staying here. Dad narrowed his eyes. You're really going to turn your back on your own brother? You turned your back on me years ago, I said quietly. There was a long silence. Dad looked at me like I was some ungrateful stranger. Ryan looked annoyed, like I'd just canceled his vacation. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt angry, but I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just stood there, waiting for them to say something that would justify the fact that they had just barged into my life uninvited, expecting me to sacrifice everything I'd built just because they thought I owed them. And then Dad said something I'll never forget. You wouldn't even have this apartment if it weren't for us. That's when everything inside me started to shift. I looked around, at the walls I painted, the couch I assembled myself, the coffee table I found secondhand and restored on weekends. Every dollar, every hour, every sacrifice, it had all led here. And now they were trying to rewrite history like I'd been carried here on their shoulders. I laughed. It was quiet at first, then louder, then full-blown laughter that caught both of them off guard. Dad stepped back, confused. What's so funny? I stopped laughing just long enough to meet his eyes. You really think I owe you? After everything. Ryan looked away, probably realizing this wasn't going to go the way they thought. But Dad wasn't done. He wasn't the type to back down when his authority was questioned. And that's when he said, if you're not going to do the right thing, maybe we'll have to make you. That was the moment everything shifted from annoying to threatening. And it was just the beginning. I stood there, barefoot on the hardwood floor, the morning chill creeping up my legs as my father threw down the gauntlet with a look that wasn't just disappointment. It was a warning. Maybe we'll have to make you. He wasn't yelling. That made it worse. It was that calm, passive-aggressive tone I knew too well. The tone he used when he punished me without raising his voice. The one that made you feel crazy for pushing back. But I wasn't 16 anymore, and this wasn't his house. You're threatening me now? I asked, voice low. Don't be dramatic, he scoffed, waving it off. All I'm saying is, sometimes you need to be reminded of your place in the family. My place? I repeated, stunned. You mean the one where I was the backup parent, the live-in babysitter, the walking wallet? Ryan snorted. Dude, stop acting like you were Cinderella. I turned to him. You want to talk about acting? You've been faking effort your whole life. How many jobs have you quit this year alone? He shrugged, unbothered. Jobs suck. I clenched my jaw. My hands were trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the pressure of years of swallowing every ounce of resentment I'd built up just to keep the peace. This wasn't just about him crashing on my couch. It was everything. The birthdays forgotten, the support I never got, the way Dad had turned me into the family scapegoat while Ryan coasted through life on a golden raft of low expectations. Dad finally took a step closer, trying to regain control. You're blowing this out of proportion. He needs help. You have help to give. Why is that so hard? I didn't respond. I just opened the door. You both need to leave. Now. Trevor. Now. They left, eventually. Not with any kind of remorse, just grumbling and throwing around words like ungrateful and selfish as they went. Ryan made sure to slam the door on his way out. I didn't sleep the rest of that day. I just sat on my mattress, staring at the ceiling. I knew they'd come back. That much entitlement doesn't just go away after one failed ambush. And sure enough, the text started the next morning. Dad, I talked to your aunt. She agrees you're being unreasonable. Ryan, you got a spare key? I might drop by to grab some stuff. Dad, this is your brother, Trevor. He's not some stranger. You have a duty. By the end of the week, I was blocking numbers left and right. I told them no. That should have been enough. But the thing about people like my dad, they don't respect boundaries unless they're enforced with brick walls and barbed wire. So when I came home one evening and saw the building manager chatting with Ryan outside the front door of the complex, I knew something was up. I walked up calmly, shopping bags in hand. Hey, I said. Ryan grinned like we were best buds. What's up, bro? Just telling Mr. Calver here I used to live with you. Thought I'd see the place again. Mr. Calver, a nice older guy who'd always greeted me with a wave, looked confused. You didn't say anything about moving in, Trevor. I didn't, I said sharply, locking eyes with Ryan. He's not staying here. Ryan's expression tightened. Come on, man. I told you I'd help with rent. You said that. You also said you wouldn't get kicked out of your last two places. He shrugged. They had stupid rules. Like paying rent. Ryan opened his mouth to respond, but saw the building manager watching and bit his tongue. He picked up his bag and muttered something under his breath before walking off. I apologized to Mr. Calver, who just nodded and said to keep him updated if there were any issues. I was grateful he hadn't just handed over a key to someone who claimed to be family. But the damage was already creeping in. That night, I found the side gate to the building propped open with a rock. A few days later, I spotted Ryan again, this time at the cafe across the street, just sitting there, watching the front of the building. When I caught his eye, he just smirked and looked away. I started checking the locks twice before bed. I bought a camera doorbell. I kept the balcony door locked, even though it was 10 floors up. Still, the messages kept coming. Dad, why are you being so cruel? You're acting like we're enemies. Aunt Carla, your dad is heartbroken. Ryan struggling. This is not who you are. Ryan, you think you're better than me? You always have. I ignored them all, but that silence seemed to fuel them even more. I guess they weren't used to me standing my ground. Then came the tipping point. It was a Tuesday night. I remember because I was working late on a freelance project, something I'd taken on to cover the furniture I still needed. Around 10:30, I decided to take a break and run down to the corner store for snacks. I wasn't gone more than 15 minutes. When I got back, the front door of my apartment was slightly ajar. My heart stopped. I checked the lock. It hadn't been forced, which meant someone had a key. A spare. I never gave out a spare. Except, I tore through the drawer where I'd kept it. The small plastic case was gone. No sound from inside the apartment. I tiptoed in, quietly opening the door to the bedroom. He was there. Ryan. Lying on my bed, shoes still on, phone in hand, scrolling like he owned the place. There were empty food containers on the floor. My bathroom light was on. The shower was wet. My towels, my brand new towels, were crumpled on the floor. What the hell are you doing here? I choked out, voice shaking. Ryan didn't even flinch. Relax. I'm just crashing for the night. You broke into my apartment. I used the key. You stole the key. I snapped. You waited until I left, and you let yourself in. Ryan sat up, annoyed. Dude, stop being so dramatic. You know Dad said I could stay. Dad doesn't live here. I do. Well, maybe if you'd just grown a spine earlier, we wouldn't have to do this the hard way. That line hit me like a slap. He wanted me to fight back. He thought this was just another power play, another tug of war he could win by being more shameless than me. He'd grown up seeing me bend under Dad's pressure, under guilt, under obligation, and he assumed I'd bend again. But something broke in me that night. I walked to the closet, pulled out a garbage bag, and began throwing his stuff in it. Ryan jumped up. Yo, what the hell are you doing? You're leaving. Now. He moved toward me like he was going to grab the bag, but I backed up fast. You lay a finger on me, and I'm calling the cops. You wouldn't. Try me. He stopped. We stood there in a silent standoff. Two brothers who hadn't really spoken like real siblings in years, now enemies in a war neither of us fully understood. But the air between us was thick with everything we never said. Every moment I'd cleaned up his mess. Every time Dad praised him while scolding me. Every year I spent fixing the family's problems while they let him burn the place down. You think you're so high and mighty now, Ryan said finally, eyes narrowed. You think you're better than us. I don't think I'm better, I said. I think I'm done. He left. Not quietly, of course. He slammed things, cursed under his breath, accused me of being heartless. But he left. I locked the door behind him and called the building manager that night. We changed the locks the next morning. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong, because just when I thought I could breathe again, something happened that knocked the wind out of me completely. The next day, I got a call from my bank. Someone had tried to open a joint checking account using my name. My credit had been pulled. A new phone line was activated under my identity. I didn't understand how, until I remembered. A year ago, before I moved, I'd left a file of old documents at my dad's house, stuff I thought I'd tossed, an expired ID, old utility bills, a printout of my social security number from when I'd been trying to correct a tax error. I'd meant to shred it. I never did. Now I was staring down the barrel of a stolen identity, and I had a pretty good idea who was behind it. I filed a fraud report that same day. I froze my credit. I spent hours on the phone with banks, credit bureaus, the phone company. And the entire time, one thought burned through my skull like fire. They weren't just trying to leech off me anymore. They were trying to be me. They weren't just testing boundaries. They were trying to erase them. And that's when I knew this wasn't about family anymore. This was war. Rock bottom doesn't always feel like a dramatic crash. Sometimes it's a quiet, dull ache. A slow unraveling you don't fully notice until you're sitting on your kitchen floor at 2 a.m. with a frozen pizza burning in the oven, your credit frozen, and your sense of trust fractured like a dropped mirror. That's where I was, 1 week after filing the fraud reports. A pile of paperwork on the table. Missed calls from banks and credit agencies. A notice from my landlord informing me of disturbances reported by other tenants. Apparently, Ryan had been loitering around the building, trying to get back what was his. My locks had been changed, my passwords updated, my mailbox rerouted, but I still felt like a stranger in my own home. Paranoid, on edge, angry, and the worst part? No one believed me. When I tried to explain to my aunt what had happened, that I suspected Ryan had used my old documents to impersonate me, she gasped. Not out of shock, but offense. You're accusing your own brother of a federal crime, Trevor? Do you hear yourself? I did. And for the first time, I wasn't backing down. Yes, I do. She hung up on me. A few days later, my dad called. Not to apologize, not even to check on me, but to scold me for airing family laundry in a fraud report that might put Ryan in danger. His actual words were, "You're trying to destroy his future over some papers and a misunderstanding. You should have come to me first." I laughed bitterly. "The last time I came to you, you told me to let him live here without asking. You think you're the victim in all this?" He snapped. "You have everything. You always have. And now you want to kick your brother while he's down." That's when I stopped responding. Completely. I cut them off, cold and clean. Blocked numbers. Deleted contacts. I didn't send a dramatic goodbye or demand closure. I just let the silence grow between us like a canyon. Because I finally understood something. They weren't going to change. But I could. That realization hurt. It felt like grieving people who were still alive. I'd always been the fixer, the one who kept the family tied together with duct tape and grit. I was the one who remembered birthdays, who showed up at holidays, who took the emotional temperature of every room I walked into. I knew when Dad was simmering, when Ryan was about to cause trouble, when Mom, before she passed, was trying not to cry in the kitchen. I carried all of that, and now I wasn't. The first week of silence was brutal. The guilt crept in like fog. Was I being heartless? Was I really abandoning them? But then I'd look at the fraud report pinned to my fridge or the charges I didn't make on a gas card in Ryan's hometown, and the fog would burn away. I wasn't being cruel. I was protecting myself. But it wasn't easy. My freelance clients dried up. I was too distracted to deliver consistent work. The stress had gnawed at my appetite. I lost weight. I stopped going to the gym. My skin broke out. I looked in the mirror one morning and didn't recognize the man staring back. Sunken eyes, stubble, exhaustion. I hit my lowest point 2 weeks after the identity theft. I was sitting in a government office waiting for a new social security card, surrounded by the hum of fluorescent lights and people arguing with clerks. A woman 2 seats down from me was crying softly. An older man next to her offered her a tissue. I just sat there numb. That's when I checked my email and saw it. A rejection from an apartment insurance claim I didn't even remember filing. Apparently, someone, likely Ryan, had tried to submit a fake claim using my address and name. That was it. That was the moment I truly broke. I left the office, sat on the curb outside, and cried. I hadn't cried like that in years. I wasn't even sure what I was crying for. My stolen identity. My broken family. The decade I spent building a life they tried to hijack. I don't know how long I sat there. But when I finally stood up, something felt different. Not better. Just cleared. Like I'd finally reached the bottom of the well. There was nowhere else to sink. That's where the rebuilding began. Quietly. Privately. No announcements. No big comeback speeches. Just one small decision at a time. First, I got my finances in order. I went through every account, every charge, every document. I filed police reports, submitted affidavits, called companies until my throat hurt. I talked to 3 different fraud investigators. I learned more about identity theft in a week than I ever wanted to know. It was exhausting, but every time I crossed something off my list, I felt a little stronger, like I was slowly dragging myself out of the pit. Then, I started writing again. Not just client work, but journaling. At first, it was just rants. Anger scrawled across the page like graffiti. But slowly, that turned into reflection. I wrote about my childhood, About the things I'd ignored for years. The time I cleaned the kitchen after Ryan's party while Dad yelled at me for being dramatic. The time Ryan stole $500 from my drawer and blamed a cousin. The Christmas when I gave up my bonus to pay the electric bill and no one thanked me. Writing helped me remember that I wasn't crazy, that I had been mistreated, that setting boundaries now wasn't betrayal, it was survival. Around that time, I found a community forum for people dealing with family estrangement. It wasn't Reddit, just a quiet corner of the internet where people like me shared stories. Some were darker than mine. Some were eerily similar. I read for hours. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. One comment stuck with me. You're not heartless for walking away. You're brave for breaking the cycle. I printed that out and taped it above my desk. As my mind cleared, opportunities started creeping back in. A former freelance client reached out, apologizing for the ghosting. He'd had a death in the family and needed help again. I took the gig, did good work. He referred me to 2 others. Within a month, I had a full plate again. Money started coming in. I replaced the mattress with a real bed frame. I bought plants for the windowsill. I started cooking again, real meals, not frozen ones. On a random Tuesday night, I made pasta with garlic bread and ate it on the balcony with music playing softly behind me. It wasn't fancy, but it felt like life. I even reached out to a therapist. That part scared me. I'd always been the handle it myself type. But something about talking to a neutral person, someone who didn't know my family, who wouldn't guilt me or twist things, felt necessary. It was hard at first. I didn't know where to begin. But once I opened the floodgates, it all came rushing out. My childhood, the favoritism, the way I was made to feel like a background character in my own life. My therapist, Lydia, didn't offer magical solutions. She just listened, validated, helped me reframe things. You weren't loved conditionally. You were used conditionally. That line hit me in the chest. She helped me realize I'd spent so long trying to earn love that was never given freely, that I kept trying to prove myself through achievements, generosity, obedience, just to get scraps of approval from people who saw me as a utility, not a son. Week by week, session by session, I started letting go of that narrative. I wasn't broken. I wasn't mean. I wasn't selfish. I was just done being the family's emotional punching bag. The rise wasn't fast. It wasn't cinematic. No training montages or big breakthroughs. Just small victories. Rebuilding routines. Relearning joy. One of those victories came on a Sunday morning when I walked past a local photography gallery downtown. I'd always loved photography, but stopped shooting when things got too chaotic. That morning, I walked in and asked about community exhibits. The woman at the desk, a soft-spoken curator named Elise, told me about a small show coming up. You should submit something, she said. So I did. I pulled out my old camera, took walks around the city, captured details, cracks in sidewalks, birds on fire escapes, elderly couples holding hands. I submitted 3 black and white prints. Nothing dramatic, just quiet moments of life continuing. A month later, one of them was chosen for display. It wasn't sold. It didn't go viral, but it meant something. That moment, the night I stood at the gallery, looking at my photo hanging on the wall with my name printed underneath, it felt like proof that I could create something beautiful without anyone's permission, without anyone stealing it, without anyone twisting it into guilt. I was rebuilding, and I wasn't done yet. But just when I thought the worst was behind me, a letter arrived. Plain envelope. No return address. Inside, just a single sheet of paper. Typed. No greeting. No signature. You think this is over, but you owe us more than you know. You'll regret turning your back on your own blood. We're not done. My hands went cold. I reread it 3 times. Same feeling each time, dread. The ink was smudged slightly on one corner. The paper was cheap, but the message was clear. They weren't finished. They hadn't learned. They were planning something. And I knew, deep in my gut, this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everything they thought they could still take. And for the first time, I didn't just want to protect myself. I wanted justice. I didn't sleep the night I got the letter. I kept the envelope on my kitchen counter under a ceramic mug, like it might float away if I didn't weigh it down. The words kept repeating in my head like an itch I couldn't reach. You think this is over, but you owe us more than you know. We're not done. It wasn't signed, but I didn't need a signature. The voice was clear. That blend of self-righteous victimhood and subtle threat, it had my father written all over it. And Ryan, well, he didn't usually speak in complete sentences, but he had no problem delivering messages, especially if they came with a middle finger and a smirk. But something had changed in me since all this started. 6 months ago, I might have panicked. I might have reached out, tried to reason with them, tried to fix things, tried to remind them that I wasn't the enemy. But that man, the one who begged for scraps of decency from people who saw him as disposable, he didn't live here anymore. And the one who replaced him? He was done playing defense. I spent the next morning pacing. No music, no podcasts. Just pacing. Thinking. Not about revenge, at first. Not really. I told myself I was just protecting myself, that I needed to be prepared in case they escalated. But the longer I stared at that letter, the clearer it became. This wasn't about a one-time boundary being crossed. This was a campaign. They weren't just trying to guilt me. They were trying to reclaim me. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to retaliate in anger. I was going to bury them with truth. I started where all great revenge plans begin, with documentation. I pulled out every file I had, bank statements, fraud reports, screenshots of texts, emails, social media posts. I created a timeline. From the first knock on my door to the day I got that letter. I printed things, highlighted, labeled, annotated. I even included the building's security footage showing Ryan loitering near the entrance weeks after he'd been banned from the property. I called the police and requested the official report on the attempted identity theft. It was a slow process, but it gave me a file number. Then I contacted the phone company and requested logs of the new line that had been opened in my name. I wasn't doing this to press charges yet. Not yet. But I wanted to be ready. Because the next time they tried something, I wouldn't be explaining myself. I'd be presenting evidence. Once the foundation was set, I did something I knew would make things personal. I filed a civil no-contact order against Ryan. I didn't expect it to go through right away. Courts take time, and I wasn't dealing with someone who'd physically harmed me. But I had enough paperwork to show a pattern: unauthorized entry, identity theft, harassment, threats. The judge scheduled a hearing 2 weeks out and approved a temporary protection order in the meantime. That meant Ryan couldn't come near me or my home without risking arrest. And when the court date came, I would be ready. But I wasn't done. Because the deeper I dug, the more I realized something. This wasn't just personal. This was systemic. My father had spent years enabling Ryan, co-signing leases, paying off debts, covering for him when things went sideways. But what if that support wasn't as clean as it looked? I remembered something from years ago, an offhand comment my mom made before she passed. She said Dad used to move money around when bills piled up. At the time, I assumed she meant credit cards. But now, in the glow of hindsight, it hit me like a freight train. My dad had access to my accounts when I was in college. I logged into an old email account I hadn't touched in years, the one tied to my student banking. And there it was, like a ghost from another life. A string of bank alerts from 2014, showing small but consistent transfers to an account I didn't recognize. $50 here. $75 there. I checked the statements. I never authorized them. The transfers stopped after I changed my bank password that spring, right after a screaming match with Dad where he accused me of hiding things. I didn't have hard proof that it was him, but I didn't need it right away, because now I had a pattern, and patterns speak louder than denials. I started reaching out to people. Not family, God, no, but people on the periphery. My cousin Jacob, who used to be close to Ryan before he moved out of state. A former roommate of Ryan's I tracked down on Facebook. Even a woman Ryan had dated briefly. A bartender named Lacey who messaged me back after a week of silence. What I got from them wasn't earth-shattering, but it painted a picture. Jacob told me Ryan once bragged about knowing how to use other people's credit without getting caught. The ex-roommate claimed Ryan had accidentally used his identity to apply for a lease, then ghosted when it got denied. And Lacey? She said Ryan had lied about his job, his age, and even claimed his uncle was paying his bills. Except later, she found letters addressed to me on his desk. She recognized my name when I messaged her and said, "I thought you were his lawyer or something." None of this was enough to build a criminal case. Yet, but it gave me one thing: leverage. I printed everything, labeled it all, sealed it in a folder. Then I did something bold. I emailed my father. I didn't threaten. I didn't insult. I didn't plead. I just wrote. I have enough documentation to show a sustained pattern of harassment, identity theft, and financial abuse. I suggest you stop contacting me and ensure Ryan does the same. If I receive even one more message from either of you, I'll be submitting the file to the authorities. The hearing date for the no contact order is next week. Let's not escalate this further." And then I waited. The silence that followed was deafening. 3 days. No response. Then, on the 4th day, I got an email, not from my father, but from a lawyer. His lawyer. It was a cease and desist. Laughable, really. Accusing me of harassment. Claiming I was defaming Ryan and causing emotional distress by slandering him to mutual acquaintances. I smiled, because now I had something even better. Proof that they were scared. So I took the letter, attached it to my documentation, and forwarded it to my own attorney. That's right. I had one now. A woman named Marina, recommended by a friend in my photography group. She specialized in family disputes and financial abuse cases. I booked a consultation and showed her everything. Every screenshot, every transfer, every message, the attempted identity theft, the letter, even the cease and desist. She didn't blink. "This is solid," she said. "You've got a paper trail most clients don't. If you wanted to pursue charges or sue for damages, you'd have a case." I wasn't sure yet. Part of me still hesitated at the word lawsuit. But hearing a professional say I wasn't crazy, that what they did wasn't normal, that meant something. Marina helped me file a formal response to the lawyer's letter. A crisp, professional reply asserting that no defamation had occurred and that further communication would be considered harassment. After that, silence. No calls. No emails. No mystery letters. I kept going. Got a new job offer, one with benefits and a steady paycheck. Moved my freelance clients to part-time. Started volunteering on weekends at a local shelter, helping teach basic photography to kids from underfunded schools. Nothing fancy, just disposable cameras and a place to express themselves. It was the most fulfilling thing I'd done in years. And I made new friends. Real ones. People who didn't know me as the responsible older brother, or the quiet one, or the ATM. Just Trevor, a guy who liked night photography and 90s movies and tried to make good pasta. I still had that envelope from the letter. I never threw it out. But now, it lived at the bottom of a locked drawer under all the documentation and my court papers. A reminder of how far I'd fallen and how far I'd risen. But I wasn't done yet. Because 2 weeks before the court hearing, I got a message from someone I didn't expect. Ryan's former employer, a man named Walter. "Hi, I got your number from Lacey. I think I have some information you'll want. About your brother and your dad." That's when everything changed. Walter's voice on the phone was calm, measured, but I could hear something else beneath it. Anger. Not the explosive kind, but the deep, tired kind you only get after someone's worn you down again and again until all you have left is resentment wrapped in restraint. "I was his manager for about 9 months, he said. "Ryan worked as a dispatcher, if you can call what he did work." We spoke for nearly 40 minutes. It started as a courtesy call. Walter said he didn't like how Ryan used my name and identity in conversations around the office, dropping hints that he was the brains behind our family's success. But then it turned into something else. Walter told me about missing inventory, an internal review, and a quietly launched investigation into suspicious vendor invoices tied to Ryan's work email. "I didn't push charges because it would have been messy," Walter admitted. "He got wind of it and quit before we could take it further. And then he said something I didn't expect. He mentioned your dad once. Said they had a fallback plan. Something about real estate. A claim." I felt the hair on the back of my neck rise. Real estate. The apartment. My apartment. That same week, I'd been receiving promotional letters from a property management firm addressed to both me and Ryan. At first, I thought it was a glitch. Maybe he'd used my address on some mailing list. But now, something didn't feel right. I thanked Walter. Asked him to send any documentation he had, even if informal. He agreed. Then I pulled up my title deed. And there it was. A tiny discrepancy in the digital registry. My name was listed correctly, but there was a footnote added just weeks after I moved in. Something about a co-residency claim pending verification. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. They weren't just stalking. They weren't just threatening. They were trying to attach themselves legally to my property. And I knew exactly how. Back when I was finalizing the purchase, my dad helped notarize a few documents. At the time, I didn't think twice. He had an old friend who was a licensed notary, and it saved me the headache of booking appointments. I trusted him. That was my mistake. Because one of those forms? A declaration of ownership intent. It had 2 signatures, mine and Ryan's. Forged. I sat in silence for a long time after I found that. Not sad. Not scared. Just cold. Cold in that way you get when something inside you finally shuts off. When the last drop of grace dries up and what's left is clarity. I wasn't going to defend myself anymore. I was going on the offensive. The next few weeks were a blur of preparation. I worked with Marina, my attorney, to build a case. Fraud. Identity theft. Attempted property claim. Harassment. Forgery. We gathered everything. Ryan's forged signature, Walter's testimony, the cease and desist, the text messages, the building's security reports, even a copy of the letter they'd mailed me. We filed an official complaint with the police, then a separate civil suit. But I didn't stop there. Because Ryan and my dad had gotten comfortable. Too comfortable. They'd spent their lives skating past consequences, leaning on other people's reputations to buffer their own failure. So I wanted this to sting in the way that only exposure could. I made sure the lawsuit filings were public. I submitted documentation to the credit agencies and added my father's name to the investigation. I alerted the notary commission about the forged paperwork. And then I went one step further. I reached out to my old church. Back in the day, my dad used to lead community projects there, food drives, fundraisers. He liked being seen as the pillar of the community. It was one of the few places he still had a good reputation. So I sent them the truth. Every document, every claim, every report. Not with malice, not with a demand, just the facts. The fallout came fast. The first real break happened in court. Ryan didn't show up to the restraining order hearing, but my evidence did. The judge barely blinked before extending the protection order for a full 2 years. Ryan couldn't come within 500 feet of me, my home, or my place of work. Any violation would be immediate grounds for arrest. Then came the criminal investigation. It started slow, interviews, phone calls, document authentication. But once they confirmed the forgery on the property paperwork, things accelerated. The authorities reached out to the notary, my dad's friend. Under pressure, the guy admitted he'd stamped the document without both parties present. A direct violation. His license was suspended. My father was named as a co-conspirator. A few weeks later, Marina forwarded me a copy of the filed charges: forgery, attempted fraud, misrepresentation of legal ownership. Ryan and my dad were both served. And then came the silence. No more texts. No more emails. Just void. Until one morning, I checked the news. It was a local story. Small headline. Community organizer and son charged in property fraud scheme. It wasn't splashed across national headlines or anything. But it was there. Their names. Their photos. A tidy summary of what they'd tried to pull. And that was enough. Enough for the church to distance itself. Enough for old friends to stop calling. Enough for their community halo to crack in two. But the real closure? That came a few weeks later. I was at home, drinking coffee, listening to a blues playlist on shuffle when there was a knock at the door. I checked the camera feed. It was my dad. Alone. He stood there, shoulders hunched, no Ryan in sight. No bag. No swagger. Just him. He looked older. Tired. Like life had finally caught up. I didn't answer. He knocked again. Waited. Then, eventually, he pulled out a piece of paper, folded it neatly, and slipped it under the door. I let it sit there for an hour before I picked it up. It was handwritten. Trevor, I never thought it would come to this. I guess I believed, deep down, that you'd always let us back in. That's what you do. You forgive. You fix. But I pushed too far. I let Ryan pull me into something I can't undo. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know I'm sorry. I lost my son long before any of this. I just didn't realize it until now. Dad, I read it once. Then again. And then I folded it, tucked it away in a drawer, and left it there. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just felt done. A few months passed. The lawsuit wrapped up in my favor. They were ordered to pay restitution, nothing life-changing, just enough to cover the legal fees and the damage they caused. Ryan tried to dodge the payments, but the court attached it to his tax records. Dad cooperated, probably part of his deal to avoid jail time. My name was cleared, my credit restored. And me? I lived, really lived. I kept teaching photography, picked up a few local clients, even started dating again. A girl named Maya who worked at the coffee shop around the corner. First date was awkward. Second was better. Third, that one felt like maybe, just maybe, I was finally walking into something good. I didn't talk about my family much, but I didn't hide them either. They were a chapter in my story, not the whole book. One evening, Maya asked me why I didn't have any pictures of my childhood on the walls. I just smiled. Because my life started here, I said, gesturing to the windows, the sky beyond, the room I had fought to protect. She nodded. That night, I took a photo from the balcony, a long exposure of the city lights stretching into the distance. I printed it the next day, framed it, and hung it above my desk. It wasn't just a picture. It was proof that sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's survival. It's peace. It's walking away with your name intact, your soul untangled, and your future wide open, and knowing they can never take it from you again.